Hey out there, this is Friday, June 22nd, 2018. And it's about 18 minutes past 7 in the morning here in Northern California. Getting an early start today. It's supposed to get pretty toasty around here. Upper 90s, mid 90s, and this weekend is supposed to get as high as 106. So, anyhow, I'm getting started early and I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff as usual, but I know what's on everybody's mind is this immigration, so I wanted to hop into that kind of right away. But I wanted the theme to be pointing out, exposing the madness of the establishment, the status quo, and all those proponents, minions thereof, and how they are under a satanic spell, whether you think of that as a literal or metaphorical interpretation. I mean, the spirit thereof, that there is this evil, bad spirit. We all have to admit that, there is bad actors in this world. And that's essentially what it comes down to, is we've got to face the music, face the fact that there is bad people, and in a lot of cases, these bad people are in very high positions of power and control with the ability to manipulate the masses. We had this Bilderberger group meeting in Italy recently, and this is the kind of venue where these people show up at. And they're these elitist types. They're the people that either are the literal money printing class with that privilege of printing the money for various nations, or they're snuggled up real close with those people. And they're really freaky people. I mean, anybody that's that hung up on power and control and money, the temporal things of this world, is a sick puppy. So on the surface, they're illogical. They're insane people. And everything they have to say is what could be termed a non sequitur. It's madness. It's illogical. And the masses don't seem to be comprehending it fast enough. I do believe there's a certain degree of awakening in our land. And the land, I mean the planet, because now that we are all interconnected with the internet, we know what's going on all around the world. All over the world they know. I mean, everybody's got a TV, even in the most remote parts of Africa and South America for the most part. Sure, there's a few indigenous tribes in these lands that are out of touch, and you notice that they seem to be a lot happier when they're not paying attention to the news and what's going on there. This ignorance is bliss, I guess, applies to these people that are, indigenous and completely out of touch. They don't want anything to do with learning, and they don't want anything to do with mass media, internet, television. They don't seem to. There is still a sector of population on this planet that is completely ignorant. And we could say, well, they're choosing it, so that's their prerogative. And everybody's got a prerogative, an exclusive right to choose what they do with their lives and what they choose to take in and what they choose to reject. So there's not a lot of judgment I have for these people. The scriptures would say something like, those that are knowledgeable will be and do wrong, they'll be evil. To be a sinner in that sense, to be evil, will be beaten with more blows, will be beaten severely, is the way it's put, as a metaphor, as an allegory to the punishment that we will receive because we feel deserving of that punishment, because we knew better and we still did wrong. So these people being ignorant in that sense, because they are completely separated and don't want anything to do with civilization as we know it, even to this day, you got to imagine that they're going to be beaten with fewer blows for doing wrong, for being evil within their own tribes, let's say. But now, that is the exception, because as I'm always preaching, that this ignorance is bliss philosophy is getting us in a lot of trouble. And when it comes to our society, our civilization, our local communities in the Western world, let's say, everybody has access. Everybody, it seems like, has a smartphone these days. And, you're really living in the past if you still use a flip phone. Like myself, but so be it. I don't have any desire for a smartphone. If I did, I imagine I would have one by now. And if someday I have a desire to have a smartphone, then I will pursue obtaining a smartphone. But I've got no use for one. My laptop serves me fine for the internet, and I see no benefit to having a smartphone. So my flip phone, albeit it's an antique, it still works quite well. It's a little LG. LG makes a fine product. This thing is about 8 years old at least, but it works fine. It takes a charge, holds a charge, and takes video and photos, and I'm very happy with it. I've left it out in the rain. I've dropped it a million times. I can't believe I haven't lost it yet, but I've still got it. So I don't care about a smartphone really at all. But, this immigration thing, this is really a conundrum. And I think anybody that is passionate about this whole thing needs to step back and be very introspective and choose their words very carefully when they try to correct other people who they believe are misperceiving what's going on at the border. We had this Peter Fonda come out recently and suggest that Barron Trump be kidnapped and be subjected to a pedophile or so. And Twitter, where he posted this suggestion, did nothing about it. And this all pertains to immigration. I'd like to ask Hollywood when the last time they hired an undocumented immigrant for any of their leading roles. And if they haven't, why they haven't done that. Well, there's legalities involved here. There's liability and all that. And we got to protect our reputation. Interesting. There's a lot of jobs out there that that aren't affected by undocumented immigrants, by the floodgates being opened and undocumented immigrants flooding in. But to finish up with this character, this Peter Fonda character, my dad actually told me he met Peter Fonda on his sailboat in 1973 in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And he said he was an arrogant SOB, as I recall, to use his terms. My dad had his own sailboat down there. He had a probably much nicer one than Peter had that his dad probably bought him at that time, Henry Fonda. But my dad had a boat he had built in the Santa Cruz Hills in the town of Felton, a 48-foot trimaran that had 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a teak wheelhouse. All the amenities, beautiful sailboat, catch rig. But anyhow, he met Peter, and they didn't hit it off, to say the least. And I don't know if I should be surprised or not. My dad has been known to be quite the devout liberal, let's say. And I think in a good sense. I think anybody that knew him would say in a good sense. I think there were some things we disagreed on, and I don't understand where he was coming from on everything. But I do understand that he's had some bad experiences with capitalism. He was brought up during the Depression. His mother died in childbirth at 8 years old, and he found himself delivering newspapers and milk all day for a dime that he had to give to support the family, give to his stepmother, who was not particularly nice, according to him. And so his dad was born in Mississauga, where he was from. His name was Daniel Joseph Credit. Or no, his name was Joseph Daniel. My dad's brother was Daniel Joseph. But Joseph Daniel Peliquin was the ancestral name. He was Indian. Mississauga tribe. Changed his name to make it shorter from Joseph Daniel de Peliquin was the ancestral name to simply Joseph Daniel Credit. And his dad was at one time said to be the strongest man in Canada. I guess there was some refrigerator lifting contest. So he was a big guy, like my dad. But my grandpa, Joseph Daniel, he was an average-sized man like myself. So generationally, that's how it's been running. Average-sized men, and then the skips a generation, then you get a big guy comes into the mix. My mom had some big guys on her side too, but I don't know how I digress her, but I was just talking about my dad a little bit and his upbringing and what he was subjected to. At 16, things were so rough he wasn't getting enough to eat that he actually stole his older brother Daniel's identification and joined the Merchant Marine. And from there he was able to make the hop, skip, and jump into the Marine Corps, where he didn't last long. I guess he did have to serve the minimum time to get any benefits, so he was in there for 4 years. He was born in 1928, so we're looking at 1928, so 16 years, so 1944, I guess, is when he got in the Merchant Marine, and so 6 years later, about 1950, I guess, he got out. And sometime after that, of course, he met my mother in Los Angeles. I never remember asking him how they met. A lot of things, once a parent moves on, you kind of wished you had asked about. But I never asked him how he met my mother. But my mother, both her parents were first-generation immigrants from Dalmatia, which is a little island off the coast of Croatia. But, I don't really understand how he got kind of a socialist bent and got kind of a fondness for Che Guevara. But he did. He had an affection for Che Guevara, and although he and I were very tightly bonded as dad and son, and we've been through it all together. We've been out in horrific storms far more than twice together on little sailboats in the Mediterranean, the English Channel, the Pacific Ocean. So we were really tightly bonded as dad and son, but he thought of me, I think, as a bit of a stuffed shirt conservative type. And it's true, I think that I am kind of an older soul, so to speak, than my dad was. He had really kind of a childlike spirit his whole life. Very vivacious and very powerful spirit. Very dynamic and charismatic, outspoken, poetic. He could really orate, and everyone that knew him admired him for those qualities. Very sociable.